Welcome to the GameMinder Report, your weekly source of upcoming gaming news and information. I'm Jeremy, and today's interview is with Erin Reynolds, maker of Nevermind. A few months
Hello.
ago, I had the good fortune to attend IndieCade in Los Angeles. IndieCade is a gathering of independent game developers to show off and share, as well as attend panels and presentations about the art and business of the independent game. Lots of games were showcased there, but one that caught my eye immediately was Nevermind due to its biofeedback mechanic. But rather than cobble together my own description, I will let the creator tell you herself. So, Erin, what is Nevermind?
Nevermind is a biofeedback enhanced psychological horror game. So the way it works is the player is actually hooked up to a biofeedback sensor. It's a Garmin cardio chest strap, actually, while they're playing this horror game. And we put them through all sorts of torture while they're playing it and put them in horrific experiences, uncomfortable experiences. And, like any horror game, the player is going to get stressed out and anxious while playing it if we did our jobs well. But the trick is that the more scared and anxious that the player gets, the harder the game becomes. So the game will respond to the player's anxiety by changing the environment in ways that makes the gameplay more difficult. So the name of the game is basically you have to learn how to calm yourself down and stay cool and relaxed while playing Nevermind, while putting yourself through these stressful scenarios in order to proceed through it. And we hope that by practicing those skills in the game, you can take those into the real world where you're constantly bombarded by stressful and uncomfortable situations. And now you have the tools and the practice to be able to deal with them and calm yourself down and manage that stress on the fly.
Very cool. Now, as I said, the biofeedback component was sort of as I was browsing through the various games, that was the one that jumped out at me. How did you come to the idea of using the heart monitor in this way?
It was something that I'd been thinking about for a while in terms of biofeedback in games. I worked on an exercise game a few years before Nevermind, and one thing that we thought about back then was could we use biofeedback to integrate in with the game in that sense. And it didn't work out for that game, but it was something that stuck with me just because I think that we're at a point in the game industry where biofeedback feels like the next step of gaming
Sure.
in terms of bringing immersiveness to the player. The example I use is you look at the evolution of controllers, and you start out with a very basic controller, then you get a controller with lots of buttons on it, and then you get touch control, and then you get motion control and the Connect and all sorts of stuff. And it's this trend of players wanting to have this more intimate relationship with their game system. And so biofeedback feels like the next step. And so I wanted to explore that for Nevermind, and while also making a game that benefited the player and taught them something they can use in the real world in the same way. So sort of out of there is where the whole concept for Nevermind evolved.
Okay, so now you say you've been thinking about this for a while. Is your background in games, psychology, a little bit of both?
Mostly games.
Okay.
I worked in the industry before going to USC as a game designer, and then I went there for my MFA degree in interactive media, where I studied games on an academic level, and that's where I created Nevermind as my thesis for that. But yeah, no formal background in psychology or hardware or science. I'm just kind of a game design geek who likes to be a mad scientist.
Okay. And so now I'm going to ask some questions about the team then, because I believe you told me when we were at IndieCade that you were working with psychologists to help you sort of shape some of the maybe horrific scenarios in ways that were effective in the game. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really, the only reason we were able to see the success that we have is because we had such an outstanding team of developers, student developers, and advisors as well. So on the development team, we had students from the cinema production school. They have the cinematic background and how to
Right.
evoke experiences based on that discipline. We had electrical engineers, we had computer scientists, we had musicians, composers who created the musical and oral aspect of it. But then we also had advisors who also had experience in the health field and psychology field and that realm as well, who were immensely helpful in sort of crafting that end of it.
So about how big is the team? How many people would you say went into creating what is Nevermind up to this point? Because I know there's probably more coming.
Yeah, we had about 10 core people working on it for the most part. And then we also worked with students at an art school in Puerto Rico who also helped create one part of the level for us. And so that expanded the team out to about 20 people. And then we had, I think it was like 6 to 8 advisors as well. So pretty big as far as student teams go. Yeah.
Okay, so and as I was just hinting at IndieCade, I got to play kind of a vertical. I got to play one full level from beginning to end, and that was, I believe you said, sort of where it was at this point.
Mhm.
What is it that you want to do next with Never? Like, where is it you're trying to take it next now that you've sort of proven the concept?
Sure. So the way the game is currently set up is there's different these different patients that you can go inside their subconscious. And so what we built was one level, one patient. It's actually set up to support up to 10 patients. So ultimately, we hope to be able to build out different levels, basically, and just build on it. We have the infrastructure there. It's just a matter of finding the time and resources to build out the content. So ideally, we'd like to be able to build it out fully, as well as try to find ways to improve the biofeedback as well. It works really pretty well right now, but there's always room for making it even more accurate and even more responsive.
Yeah, I will say when I played it, I was either playing it in the perfect situation or the least perfect situation because I was, you were set up in a tent at IndieCade,
Mhm.
and what actually worked out really well was it was kind of windy when I was playing it, and the side of the tent kept flopping out and then smacking me in the side of the head. And every time that happened, I could see the game get a little zzz, because I
Yeah.
was like, oh, and I would jump, and clearly the biofeedback was seeing that. I mean, obviously that wasn't specific to my experience of the game. It was my experience of the environment around me.
Yeah.
But I could definitely see. I know a lot of horror gamers like to sort of turn the lights down and turn the music up and really let it sort of overwhelm them. So I definitely thought that it might have seemed like a less than ideal way to show off your game, but it actually turned out being pretty good given the way that the game sort of works. How is it that you ended up sort of getting hooked up with IndieCade, and how did you get the nod to actually be one of the presenters or showcase games there?
Yeah, I mean, being a part of IndieCade is something that I've always wanted to do ever since I learned about it. It was sort of a game developer dream of mine. So it was an amazing thrill to be able to be a part of it this year. It's a festival I've been attending for a few years now, and we when submissions were called for IndieCade, Nevermind was still fairly early along, but we decided to submit it. Why not? And someone must have liked it and decided to invite us there. So it was a huge thrill to be able to be a part of that.
That's great. So you hinted at it already, and you've mentioned it in terms of being sort of part and parcel with the indie crowd. What is your sort of gaming cred? What games did you play when you were a kid? What games got you really psyched to be somebody who makes games for a living?
Yeah, I was a huge gamer growing up. My parents actually many times confronted me with their concerns about me never finding a job because I played so many games.
Yeah,
So,
been
so
there.
I showed them. Um, but I grew up. I was a big Sega Genesis girl, and so like
Okay.
anything out there for the Genesis, I loved Sonic, of course, and Echo the Dolphin was one of my all-time favorite games, and I just liked a little bit of everything, really. And then I knew leaving high school that I wanted to do something that combined art and technology. I wasn't sure what. Originally, it was animation,
Okay.
and that evolved into special effects. And then, and then about later on in undergraduate school, I realized that you could actually have a job as a game developer. Originally,
Yeah.
it was a concept artist, and that evolved into game design. And so after leaving my undergraduate school, let me get a sip of water.
Sure.
Still early for me. I ended up working at Disney Interactive Studios as a game designer there, and did a couple of games in that realm, and I loved it. I just fell in love with making games. It's one thing to play them, but I actually enjoy making them even more,
Yeah.
which is a great position to be in. And then I decided after Disney to go back to school because about that time was when the game industry was getting really interesting because you're starting to see things like serious games become popular
Hmm.
and games for health and social games and mobile games and all of these different aspects that I just really wanted to dive into. And so that's I went to school and then graduated. Now I'm back in the industry.
And what games are you playing right now? Well, actually, I should ask, do you even have time? Because I know you've got a full-time job. You were saying you are making this game on your free time. Do you even have time to play any games right now?
Not as much as I'd like to. That's the sad irony of making games.
I have to agree with you on that one.
It's awful. You go into the industry because you love games and then you can never play games again. But I try to every so often. Right now I'm slowly but surely getting through Borderlands 2, which I
Okay.
love so far. And then also there's a game called Virtue's Last Reward, which is a sequel to a Nintendo DS game. This one's 3DS, and the original one was just regular DS, called 999, like 9 doors, 9 hours, 9 people, or some combination like that.
Okay.
And it's sort of it's a mystery puzzle horror game, and actually, a lot of the puzzle solving and narrative integration with the puzzles from that game inspired Nevermind. So I'm excited to be diving into the sequel and getting more of my fix on that.
So now, obviously, Nevermind, just to speak to some of what you were just talking about, Nevermind is obviously an indie game, and it's going to be released for the PC, which is obviously more conducive to sort of independent development. But you mentioned a couple consoles there, and you said, some consoles were in your past. Console versus PC, do you see Nevermind, if it is successful, possibly seeing a release on maybe an independent-friendly console like an Ouya, or even, maybe like an Xbox Live Arcade or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see it have a console future. That would be really exciting, and obviously it helps in some senses with the distribution of it. But the biggest challenge, obviously, is the biofeedback sensor.
Sure. Well, that I think will be when all of the next gen consoles come in. I mean, obviously, a lot of them are experimenting with some interesting new hardware technologies. A lot of the information that came out last couple weeks over the 720 with the new Kinect, and the sort of PlayStation 4 Omni with this sort of head-mounted ridiculousness.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's been shown that you can do your own hardware. I mean, the what's it called? The rhythm games all release their own. Granted, that's just sort of a translation of a button, so you'd have to probably dumb down the biofeedback to make it work in a system like that, unfortunately.
Right. Well, and there's also some really creative ways that you can integrate biofeedback with hardware. For example, there is a couple of apps for the iPhone that use the LED light sensor and the camera on the back of the iPhone, and the light will shine through your finger, and then the camera can see, you shine a flashlight through your finger, it looks all bright red, right? And it can tell the blood flow in your finger based on that, because every time your heart beats, it pumps blood into your finger, and then the color changes slightly depending on how much blood you have in your finger at any given time. And so it can read what your pulse is based on that, which is really interesting. And then for us, we use a metric called heart rate variability, which we can calculate from the player's pulse. So there's sneaky ways that you can get the data you need using tools that were never intended for biofeedback, which is really cool. Yeah.
Now, since we're swaying a little bit into the technical discussion, what are you guys using to build the game? Are you using like Game Maker? What tools? Blender, what have you?
Yeah, no, we're using Unity 3D.
Unity, right? Okay.
Love Unity, and that's been a really great tool for Nevermind, because it's been flexible enough to let us experiment in the ways that we were hoping we could experiment, both in terms of setting up the visual atmosphere, as well as, of course, the biofeedback integration. And then with that, we use Maya to build a lot of the 3D assets, Photoshop, those standard tools. We actually used a lot of assets from TurboSquid. We would take a basic asset from there and then just modify it to the creepiest thing possible, put it in the game. So that was a really helpful tool as well.
Very interesting. So now we just talked about, unfortunately, not getting to play games as much as we would like, but what is your most anticipated upcoming game?
Oh, that's a good question. Being out of date with games also means being out of date with game news. So yeah. I have to think about that a little bit. It's like my backlog is so crowded right now that I'm just so focused on the games that I want to get to. But I don't know. There's a lot of good ones coming out. To give that a little bit more thought.
Okay, I'll let you think about that for a minute. So now, obviously, we've talked gaming cred, we've talked gaming business. I wanted to ask specifically, as the head of an indie game and a woman, have you found anything difficult there, or do you think that the industry is finally starting to realize that women can do more than just marketing and creative?
Yeah, it's really interesting. That question comes up a lot, and
I'm sure it does.
Really, yeah, it's funny because it's I really don't think it matters that much. I think maybe I think there was a time when obviously the game industry was very male focused. I think that a lot of positive changes have happened because there's been so many people working really hard to make those changes, which is great. And, I'm grateful that I can benefit from that. And if anything, I feel like the industry has gotten almost too self-conscious about that in some respects, where people kind of go out of their way to it's like, well, we're going to make you feel like you're a part of us, and it kind of swings the other way, where once again you feel kind of singled out because now everyone is overly conscious of being a female in games. So it's an interesting scenario. But yeah, for the most part, I think especially with indie gaming, perhaps if you have a cool idea, people will get behind you and support you. And it's really all about creating the most amazing product and pushing the medium forward. So I think really it's more just about the ideas and the passion behind it than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I asked that question. I'm sure as a presenter and a showcaser, you probably didn't get to attend any of like the panels or the presentations, which is one of that's we've done shows like PAX and other ones where it's like I didn't get to see anything at PAX because I was too busy showing off stuff, which is always sort of a double-edged sword. But one of my favorite panels was talking specifically not so much just about women in gaming, but other sorts of minority voices, whether it be racial, whether it be transgender, transsexual, homosexual, like all sorts of these things where obviously IndieCade is a great place for that because I don't know. I mean, obviously PAX is a pretty good place. And we attended RTX, which is the Rooster Teeth, which has also got a pretty good community, but they both still have that sort of oppressive AAA gaming like kind of thing going on. And IndieCade wasn't like that at all. Every voice really, really, truly does matter and is listened to in that place. But the one frustration I heard more than anything was everybody loves my idea, but now I'm having trouble selling it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts regarding we talked a little bit about distribution and that kind of thing, but do you have sort of a model moving forward? Are you going to do direct sales? Are you going to try and get on, some sort of distribution platform? Like, have you thought through the business side of things as well as the creative?
Yeah, that's what we're working on right now. We completed the first level last summer. We're giving ourselves a year to figure out what the next steps are and how to move forward with it. And there's a lot of it's great because there are a lot of fantastic options out there now that weren't even available a few years ago. Kickstarter, of course, is a big one, and Steam Greenlight and all of that great stuff that's kind of emerging for indie games, all those opportunities. But of course, that also means that there's a lot of indie games that are going out there. So it's getting, to be a very crowded field. So we just need to figure out what's the best option for Nevermind. I think some options are just simply better than others for different games. And so for Nevermind, of course, we have the biofeedback hardware we have to take into consideration. It's a little bit of a wackier game. So whatever we do to move forward with it on the business side, we need to make sure that it doesn't limit our ability to really think outside the box and make really risky creative decisions. And also one very logistical challenge that we're running into is that since it was a student game, since last summer, a lot of us have graduated. So the team is starting to scatter. So how do we manage that as well? So there's a lot of different variables that we're juggling. And so we're just trying to see what's the best option for Nevermind and for the team.
Gotcha.
At the end of the day, we want to get it out there in one way, shape, or form.
Right.
So, if there just doesn't look like there's a good way to build out all the levels realistically, then we'll probably just release the first level for free and let people enjoy it and have fun with it. But we're hoping that we can find a way to build it out.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, obviously, Nevermind still very much in active development. A release date probably not really something you're even considering at this point yet. But if anybody does want to know when that happens, they can track the game in GAME.minder. It is in there. I've been tracking it since IndieCade. But is there anywhere else they can go if they want more information? Where would you send somebody who wants more information about your game?
Sure. We have a website. It's nevermindgame.com. We also have Twitter at NevermindGame, or a Twitter account. And then we also have a Facebook page as well. So you can it's like Facebook/NevermindGame. So check us out.
And we will have all of that information in the show notes for this episode. To view those show notes or to get more episodes, don't forget to visit GameMinderReport.com/interview/4. To see when all the newest games are listed, you can follow GameMinder on Twitter or visit Facebook.com/GameMinder. And to track all your favorite upcoming games, visit GameMinder.com or download the brand new app just launched last week for iOS or Android. So finally, I just want to say a big thanks to our guest today, Erin Reynolds, creator, mastermind, if you will, behind Nevermind. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. It's fun to be a part of this.
Great, terrific. So I'm Jeremy, signing off for the GameMinder Report, reminding you, don't forget to play.